this engineered, but don't know.
If it is, then I'm the know.
I'm
So,
on
yeah,
social
you go to
media.
a party or he was giving this.
How about you tell us what's your religious background?
My name is Dan, and I was born and raised one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and recently had a deconversion. Had a very eventful year that led to me getting the courage together to disassociate myself from the organization, which involves turning in a formal letter to the elders of the congregation, and following that they make an announcement for the congregation, and then everybody in the congregation, including your closest family, to shun you for life. So
Have you experienced that?
yes, yeah, it's an organizational mandate that happens around the world. Anytime anybody wants to leave, they know that they face losing their family. It's the primary way that they keep people in the organization. So it's really difficult to leave. And it's also really difficult to allow your mind to explore doubts, because when you know the consequences, the end game of exploring doubts is losing your family. It causes this tremendous conflict in your mind. I struggled with cognitive dissonance for 12 years before I finally got the courage to leave. That fight in my mind between what I knew to be true and what I believed to be true just got to be too much. So I've met those consequences. I've faced my greatest fear, and being here today with these people has been an incredibly positive experience. To be around people that are not afraid of asking questions. I was in an authoritarian religion, a radical authoritarian religion that didn't allow you to question leadership. And so, this has been really refreshing.
Well, now, recently it's come to light about these secret apostasy trials.
Yeah.
Can you shed some light on what they are, if you know?
So I avoided that by writing my letter. Basically what happens is if it's heard that you're asking questions, they'll probably meet with you and say, we've heard that you have some doubts and we want to encourage you. And if you have two choices at that point, you can either listen to what they're saying and pretend that you're satisfied and then go along with business as usual, or you can say, I'm not satisfied with those answers you're giving me. I still have questions. And if those questions are... If the fundamental question they're going to ask you is, do you believe that the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses is God's sole channel for distributing truth? If your answer to that is, I don't know, or no, you're getting a trial. And actually, you probably have a trial even before then. If it's known that you have these questions and you're talking to other people about it, they will call you in. They call it a judicial committee. And it's not just for apostasy. They'll have it for anything that they view as a serious wrongdoing. So if a kid has premarital sex, he will be sat before a judicial committee. They will decide whether they feel he is repentant or not. If he's viewed as unrepentant, he'll be expelled and shunned. So the same thing applies to apostasy, which in their definition means questioning the governing body or the leadership of that organization, the cult leaders, frankly. So these apostasy trials people have been filming them and putting them on YouTube, which is great. They ask you at the beginning of these trials if you have a recording device, which, you either have to work around it and kind of not give them a straight answer or just out and out lie. And I give the guys that have done it a lot of credit. They've gotten to the point where they can recognize that these men are not representing God. They use dishonesty in their practices, and so to tell a little white lie and say, no, I don't have recording. And there was one guy that had an iPhone in his tie. That one is great. I love that video. It's like a 5-part video, because these trials go long. Unless you're going to come out right out of the gate and say, I don't believe that the governing body is being used by God, then they'll say you're out the door. But if you try, you can keep it going a lot longer to make points and to kind of draw attention to how twisted the thinking is and all the kind of double standards that they have in this organization. So I give a lot of credit to the guys that have done it, but I didn't want to go through that. So I just did my formal disassociation. There are some people that say that you shouldn't do either one of those things because then you're kind of playing by their rules. So they will just abandon their faith altogether, and they call that just going inactive. problem with that is you're constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering if you're going to get a letter summoning you to a trial. You know, if they saw you putting up Christmas lights, or if they saw you walking into another church, they would send you, or saw you smoking. I mean, there's any number of things that are considered serious judicial matters. And so if you're seen doing any of those things...
So hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No problem.
Let me get this straight. So they're like, hey, I saw him putting up Christmas lights. This is serious business. We need to have a trial.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, they're radical. Or I don't know if I told you that. My catchphrase for Jehovah's Witnesses, they're a radical, fundamentalist, pseudo-Christian, doomsday cult. and that there's an example. I mean, you can't put up Christmas lights. You're virtually disassociating yourself by doing that. Because they will send you a letter, even if you're inactive. If they see that you're doing something like that, you could receive a letter that says that you're summoned to a judicial meeting, and if you don't go, they could disfellowship you, even if you're not present, which means they'll make an announcement, and if you're not already shunned, you will be.
Now, I know one of the big controversies that's been coming up with the Jehovah's Witnesses has been their strategic abuse of children. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, strategic probably wouldn't be the word I'd use. It's a touchy subject, and it's one that I don't usually comment on. I make videos on YouTube. If you want to look me up, it's Daniel Wiebe on YouTube. And that's a subject that I've avoided. I've talked about a lot of things, including failed prophecies and, you know, the ban on blood transfusions, things like this. Yes, there's definitely a problem with child abuse in the organization. What I'm trying to determine is it disproportionate to what's going on in other churches? So I'm still trying to work that out.
Well, in my own opinion, I don't think that it's disproportionate at all to other churches, but I feel that the way that they try to hide it is kind of on the level of the Catholic Church.
Right, and there's a law firm right now, Zalkin Law Firm, has a lot of these cases in the works, and he's gone on record saying that the Catholic Church has at least said mea culpa, and they've admitted that they mishandled things, and Jehovah's Witnesses have not, and very likely will not ever say that, because their policies, they feel, are biblical. So, you know, for example, they have a two-witness rule, where you're not supposed to take an older man to task before the congregation without 2 or 3 witnesses. The problem with that is, when is there ever a second witness in the case of pedophilia? So if a child is molested, they can't go by that child's word and take action in the congregation. So he's allowed to keep his position. I think I have that right. See, again, I'm afraid to comment on it too much because I don't want to get it wrong, because there's a potential for lies to get spread, and I feel that is detrimental to my cause and the other activist cause if you start using lies to expose this organization, which I do view as a harmful cult. Lies will diminish the credibility of your argument. So until I understand, get my head around it better, I don't like to comment on that too much. But I am glad that it's bringing them into the spotlight more, and I'm hoping that things like shunning start get more addressed, and, you know, greater attention to the ban on blood transfusions and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, if you ever feel like you've come to a certain decision on that one day, I hope you look me up so that we can have like a little live discussion.
Sure.
About it.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, awesome. I'm kind of curious as to how you feel about, hold on, let me ask this other one first. You said that you struggled with cognitive dissonance for a good 12 years, right?
Yep.
What kind of things did you use, tools or anything like that you used to really overcome that, or was it really just your own will?
Well, I can answer that 2 ways. How do you overcome cognitive dissonance? The process of cognitive dissonance is to suppress the doubts. So that was my mission for 12 years. This dates back to a movie that I saw at the Milwaukee Public Museum at the Omnimax Theater called Australia Land Beyond Time, I think it's called. And it just talks about the unique life that's on the continent. And up until that moment, I had never had a doubt in my life. I had a little bit of a problem with the idea of only Jehovah's Witnesses surviving Armageddon. But it wasn't until that moment that I ever thought, there might be something to this evolution thing, which is a really terrifying thought. Again, first thing you think, I mean, it's not even a conscious thought, it's that you know that you'll lose your family if you pursue this thought, so you have to suppress it. So the way you suppress it is, with the cult, they have a tremendous amount of cult-generated propaganda. Everybody knows that Jehovah's Witnesses come to the door with magazines. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Jehovah's Witnesses have this huge wealth of propaganda that essentially amounts to a one big persuasive essay with no references. And so what you do is you go to that wealth of information, and they have an answer for every question you can think of. It's not necessarily a logical one. There might not be any critical thinking in it, but you are satisfied by it. So that's the way I dealt with the cognitive dissonance for years. But I developed panic attacks. I just felt more and more comfortable in the culture because no one else seemed to be struggling with it. I'm sure that more are, but it's all hidden. You're not allowed to talk about it, so you can never have like a true close relationship of saying how you feel and what your concerns are. So anyways, how did I finally get out of it? It's hard to even explain. I have a very eventful year. One of the things that happened is my grandfather died. As a person that had panic attacks, I thought that I had this terrible fear of death, but I had like an epiphany at my grandfather's funeral that it wasn't fear of death that was causing me anxiety, it was fear of not living. I had been in this organization with doubts for 12 years. I mean, I was born and raised in it, but I would say the first 24 were relatively happy, because I didn't have doubts yet. But for those 12 years, I was like in this fog of just barely existing. And so that's when I really started confronting it, was at my grandfather's funeral. And so then I had to make a decision of, do I submerge myself in this and try to squash the doubts, or do I go the other direction? And I prayed about it a lot. I mean, it was a lot of crying. It was a really difficult period. People could tell something was off, but of course couldn't talk about it with anybody. Just had to, bear it on my own. And it was just a process of realizing that I was headed out the door. And it's been amazing. It's crushing to lose your family and your social circle and to try to rebuild your life over at 37. But I don't regret it. And there's been a lot of great benefits. Like today, I mean, being around these people, in a crowd of people that I feel comfortable with, as opposed to these gatherings of Jehovah's Witnesses where I feel anxious and disconnected, So I have no regrets. Sorry, that was kind of a long-winded answer.
No,
Did you just another one? Did you have another one?
Oh yeah. Well, I was just going to ask about the dynamic between without your belief and before when you were believing, before you started questioning.
Right.
But what's that dynamic like?
I'm not sure what you mean exactly.
Well, how was your general demeanor when you were religious? Did you have a certain set of morals that kind of shed after you lost the faith and all that stuff?
Well, I put up Christmas lights almost immediately. I'm trying to do as many things as I can that I feel are not harmful, but would have been viewed as immoral in that fundamentalist environment. So, I mean, I'm trying to check off as many off the list as I can. I disassociated in September. I celebrated my birthday, which they don't do, in November with my non-witness family. I'm very fortunate in that I have a pretty big non-Jehovah's Witness family. There's a lot of people that leave the organization who have nobody, and suicide is a huge issue for these people. A 5 to 10 times greater risk of suicide for Jehovah's Witnesses and ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, because you lose your everybody, But thankfully, I do have some non-Jehovah's Witness family who've been really supportive. So I had my birthday with them. I went to Thanksgiving. They don't celebrate Thanksgiving either. I had Christmas with them. Not because I necessarily believed in Christ, but because it was a great time to get together with my family. And it wasn't this, debauchery that Jehovah's Witnesses, try to spin Christmas as. It just was a nice time with family, and I loved it. Like I said, I put up the Christmas lights right away. Me and my partner, girlfriend, we observed solstice. I've been feeling a reverence for nature that I never really had before. I see the beauty around me, so I can kind of get why all these ancient cultures loved the sun and the equinox and the solstice and all these things meant a lot to them. So that's been kind of interesting to explore some of those things. But yeah, I mean, I'm with a partner. We live together. She's got 4 kids. It's great. We're not married, so I guess that would be really, really a big no-no, but I don't feel it's destructive in any way.
Just curious, do you feel that because there's been a big conversation going around about how childhood indoctrination could be seen as child abuse. How do you feel about that?
I think it very much can be. In the case of Jehovah's Witnesses, because I alluded to it earlier, they have this idea of exclusive salvation. They may not use that phrase, but that's what it is. And they're very elusive about it. If you ask them the question when they come to your door, the question is, do Jehovah's Witnesses believe that only Jehovah's Witnesses will be saved? They do believe this. What that means is they're teaching their children that when they go to school, they have to convert their classmates, and if they don't, they're all going to die. That's child abuse. To be in a world where everyone around you who doesn't believe what you do is going to die it's beyond judgmental. It's a different realm of bigotry that I didn't see when I was in it, but now that I'm out, I look at people different. Like going to the farmer's market. It used to be you're supposed to look at everybody as potential brothers and sisters. Like, these are somebody that I can convert. That was your way of not looking down on them, is just look at them as potential brothers and sisters. Now I can just look at them as people that are, sharing the space with me and, my brethren, so to speak, just by virtue of the fact that we're all humans and all trying to make the best of life. So that's been great too. But I do feel that that there is a certain amount of child abuse with any indoctrination, but especially with the really fundamentalist groups.
Well, I'm so glad that you were able to talk to me, and I hope that we can connect up over Facebook, and we can do some more discussions about all of this, because I'm very interested in it, and I have to say I admire your strength for doing what you did, being shunned by your family.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry that you've had to go through that.
All right, thank you. Thanks a lot.
But anyways, like I said again, we'll connect up over Facebook or whatever, and we'll schedule something.
Sounds good.
All right, awesome.
Thanks a lot.